Let's work on Rain Boots 1 on row 3 of our Spring Showers quilt. It's time to work on Rain Boots 1 on page 45. I have the background fabric that has interfacing fused on the back. I have the batting and the two pieces of material for the rain boots. They have interfacing on the back and the clear iron-on vinyl on the front to make the rain boots look shiny. From the embellishment kit, I have some cording that will be used for straps on top of the boots. Let's get started. Since all of the rain boots have the clear iron-on vinyl on the front to make the rain boots look shiny, I thought I would do a quick demonstration on how I iron those on. The embellishment kit comes with the clear iron-on vinyl. I cut my piece to size. I fused the interfacing on the back, and I'm ready to put the vinyl on the front. This is a sticky vinyl that you peel, and we will put the sticky side down. Before I do that, I have a lint roller that I just keep parchment paper on, and I want to lint roll this to make sure that there's no little specks under the vinyl. Once we put the vinyl on and iron it on, we won't be able to get anything up. So I've got that ready to go. I will take the vinyl and make sure there's nothing on it. Press it on top. Then I will take the paper that came on the vinyl and I will cover it because we never want to press the iron directly on top of the vinyl or it will melt. And now I will just press with pretty firm pressure for about 10 to 15 seconds. No steam in the iron. When I'm doing several of these, I have a heat press that I use and use the firm pressure on the heat press and do several pieces at one time. Let it cool for a second. Now we're ready to go. In the instructions, Rain Boots 1 are divided into two blocks. The left boot is on one block and the right boot is on another block. Then those blocks are seamed together to make up the block of Rain Boots 1. I've decided to put these two boots onto one block and make them the same size as the Rain Boots 2. This step is, of course, totally optional, and you can follow the directions in the book to make the two separate blocks and then sew them together. But if you'd like to learn how to make this into one block, let's go through the steps in Embrilliant software. I've opened Embrilliance, and the first thing I'm going to do is change my hoop size. The last project that I did used the 4x4 hoop, so I need to go to the Preferences folder on the top toolbar, change to my 7x12, click Apply, and then OK. Now to get the hoop to be shown on the screen, I need to click this compass on the top right, then click H, and it brings my whole hoop into the screen. Because I am changing the size of the block for the Rain Boots 1 and 3, I can't go by the instructions with the size of quilting background used. I will need to use the same size as the Rain Boots 2. So for reference, I'm going to bring in my completed file for the Rain Boots 2. And you can always go up to this icon, which is the merge stitch file, like we've been doing on all of our blocks. But another easy way I wanted to show to get a design onto the software is just open the folder wherever it is. I have one on my desktop. I've opened it to the Spring Showers, and I have my combined files folder, the embroidery files, and the quilting bundle. So the first thing I'm going to do is open the combined files folder because I want to bring in the boots 2 that we did so that I can make sure I'm doing the exact same size. So I will just click that and drag it in, and you can see our file there. When I design these blocks, it will be easier if it's in the correct orientation. So for this reference block, I will select it, go to the top rotate button, and rotate it 90 degrees. Now you can see that the hoop is kind of in the way, so I am also going to rotate it. If you look at the bottom where the hoop size, you can double click and it will rotate the hoop. I'm going to drag this off for right now, and the first thing I need to do is to bring in the background quilting for the Rain Boots 1. So I will open the folder, go to the quilting bundle, and I will be doing Animal 1, and I need the 6x8 horizontal. This design has a horizontal and a vertical. I will take the horizontal and drag it into the hoop. Now I need to rotate this also, so I will select the background quilting, go up to the rotate, click on it, and it'll be centered and ready to design. Now I need to bring in the yellow rain boots. I will go to the embroidery file, and these are the 2 rain boots that I need. I will take the left and drag it in, and the right and drag it in. They will both be centered, so I will need to move them apart. And now we need to decide how close we want these boots. So on the boots, these lines right here are placement lines, but those were for the smaller individual blocks when we were doing the boots on 2 separate blocks. So I am going to only use this right line for the right boot, and I'm going to line it up with the outside of this quilting background block. It needs to be moved over just a little bit, so I will select it, and using my arrow on my keyboard, I will just move it a couple of times over so that it lines up right here. Then I need to do the same thing with this boot, which that is pretty much right where it needs to be. Now I need to do the same thing with the top and bottom lines of each of the boots. They need to also be aligned with the outside of the background quilting. So I will select the right boot, and using my arrow down key on my keyboard, I will go down 2 notches. That lines up. This left boot just needs to be moved down probably 1. So now that we have them lined up, this ensures that the 3 blocks of boots, all the boots will be lined up evenly, and one pair won't be higher than another pair. Now the last thing that I'm going to change on this block is the background quilting. I am going to flip it so that the birdhouse is on the left side. This little bird right here next to the flowers is kind of a lot going on, and it really probably doesn't matter. The background quilting honestly doesn't really show a whole lot. It blends into the background and just gives a lot of dimension. But I think I'm going to go ahead and change it. So I'm going to select that background quilting. I'm going to go up to this little icon to flip horizontal, and it will flip the whole block. So now that the birdhouse is on the left, and there's still a bird up here, but it's not quite so intertwined with those flowers. Again, it probably doesn't really matter, but I'm going to leave it like that. I think that looks good. Now that I have the block the way I want it to be stitched out, I do need to make some additional changes. The first thing I'm going to do is to delete this reference block that we brought in the Rain Boots 2. So I will just select it and hit delete on my keyboard. Now we have just our design that I need to make some changes to. Looking at this block, I think I do want to make one additional change. I think I want the boots to be a little bit closer together. Instead of having that line up with the outside of the background quilting, I am going to move it over just a little bit. So I'm going to select this right boot, and I'm going to use my arrow keys on my keyboard and move over 3 times. So it puts that line in the center of those 2 outside lines. And I'll do the same thing with the left boot. I think that the boot's a little bit closer, looks just a little bit better. And now I'm ready to color sort this design. Now this block is ready to be stitched, and while it can be stitched just like it is, there are a lot of steps that can be grouped together. Let's look at how the block is now. If we go to the Stitch Simulator and run through, of course, the batting and the tack down of the fabric and then the quilting are first. Then we will start the left boot, and it will do the flowers, and then start on the boot with the placement of the fabric, tack down of the fabric, and then the decorative outline of the boot, and then the sole of the boot. Then it will finish up the flowers. Then we will start the right boot, and it will go through the same steps. It will do the placement and tack down of the fabric, then the outline, and then finally the sole of the boot. Well, we want to condense or combine the boot steps so that there's less steps and less color changes. To do that, we need to do color sort. In order to color sort, the steps that you want to run together at the same time will need to be the same color over here on the right hand side. And as you can see, for example, we have a default blue and a default orange. And then we have a default blue and a default orange again. And then even more default blue and default orange. Well, if we were to color sort, all those blue and oranges would be combined, and those steps need to be done at different times because they're in different parts of the design. So I will need to make changes to the colors that we want to run together. But the first thing that I'm going to do is delete these placement lines that we used when we were lining up the boots. Those are placement only, and they are not stitched. So on the left boot, the very last step is those placement lines. I will select that step and then hit delete on my keyboard. Then I will go to the right boot, the very last step, select that and hit delete on my keyboard. Now those placement lines are gone. Now let's change the colors of the steps so that we can color sort. I'm going to open the background quilting, and again you'll notice that there are several default blue and oranges. Now this default blue first one is the placement for the batting. The first default orange is the tack down of the batting. Now I cut my batting to the exact size, so I always skip this step. And so I am actually going to just delete this step since I don't need it. I will select it and hit delete on my keyboard. Then the next step is the placement for the fabric. And if you have seen any of my other videos, I also skip this step because it's only 1/4 of an inch past the batting, and our fabric is much larger than that. Kimberbell is very generous in the sizes that they have us cut, and so this is a step that I also skip, and so I'm going to go ahead and delete that as well. So now in the quilting design, I have the placement for the batting, and then I have the tack down of the fabric, and then I have the quilting. So that's ready to go. Now I will work on the boots, and these will be a little bit more involved because there's more steps, but it's still easy to find the same step and change the color. So let's close up the background quilting, and then we will open up both of the steps for the boots. Now we'll go through the steps to see which steps can be combined. The first few steps of the left boot are the flowers and leaves and the centers of the flowers. And and they're all different colors, so that's perfect. This first default blue, it's hard to see, but that is a placement line for some cording that we're going to use for straps. It's a 3D element that we will add. So this blue is the placement. Then you would place your straps on, and this default orange would tack those down. Now these are the first blue and orange that we have in this design, in the boot design, but we have a blue and orange in the quilting design. If we were to color sort and leave these colors as is, those lines would be stitched when the quilting was stitched. So we need to change these colors. I will click on this default blue, then come down to the blue swatch and click it, and make sure we're in thread so that we can pick different colors. And I'm just going to pick this first one on the bottom called Grotto Blue. It doesn't matter what color, it's just we need a different color than the default blue. So I will pick that color and hit OK. Then I will go to the orange and do the same thing. I will click this color. I'm going to pick the bottom color, which is Mars, and click OK. So know that now those steps are on its own and not connected with the background quilting. Now while we're here, this right boot will also have the 3D straps. So let's go ahead and find those, and we will change those to the Grotto and the Mars. So let's scroll down to the right boot, and you can see a picture right here. And this boot does not have any flowers, so the first step of this boot is actually going to be the placement and tack down of that strap. So the default blue, we will click right here and go to the same Grotto Blue. We want the same blue, so it will run at the same time. Then the orange, click on orange, and we want Mars, the same color, and hit OK. So now the same steps for the placement lines are the same for both boots. Now let's move on to the next step. The next step is the placement line for the fabric of the boot. It's default blue, so we do need to change that. We'll click on the color. We've used the Grotto Blue, so let's use the one right above it called Robin's Egg. And you can use whatever color comes up. You don't have to find and do the exact same colors as me. Whatever comes up, just kind of go in order when you need to change the color. So I'll choose Robin's Egg and select OK. And then for the tack down of the fabric, I'm going to change it from default orange. I've used Mars, so I'm going to use the next one, which is called Grapefruit. Select OK. So now we need to change those two steps for the right boot. So let's scroll down. Here's that default blue, which is the placement for the fabric. We've used Grotto Blue, so we'll use Robin's Egg, the same as we used for the other boot. The default orange, pick Grapefruit, and now those boots, placements, and tack down for the fabric are the same. Now if we go up to the next, after Grapefruit was our next step, that is the satin outline of the boot. And this is using a color called Buttercup. And if you look up at the flowers, we've used the default Buttercup. So this one needs to be changed. So I will click on that color, and I will pick the bottom that comes up for me, which is Cornflower, and hit OK. Now let's go down to the right boot, we want to get that same buttercup step, which is the outline. Select that color and pick cornflower. So both boot outlines will run at the same time. You're right at this step. The next color or the next step is the sole of the boot, and that is shadow. And let's make sure we haven't used shadow. Nope, we haven't used it. We know it's not in the quilting. So because this color has not been used, we don't have to change it. So we will double check that this right boot has the same step and the same color, and it does, shadow. And we don't need to change that since those two are now the same color and it has not been used anywhere else in the design. Now we've come to the last few steps of the left boot. Some flowers that will overhang the boot and of course have to be done after we place the fabric. Now if you look, there are sage, tidewater, and buttercup, and if we remember at the very top we also use sage, tidewater, and buttercup for the flowers that are inside the boot. If we were to leave these three colors, these steps would run at the same time, and that's not what we need. We need them to run after the boot has been finished. So we do need to change these colors. So let's get that first color, sage, click on it, and I am going to pick the next one up, which is Air Force Gray. Click OK. Then I'll go to the flower, which is Tidewater. You need to change. I will hit right above it, which is Sterling. And then our last buttercup, we used cornflower, and I'm going to skip the linen because you can't see it very well, and I'm just going to go to the mellow. So now we have different colors so that those won't color sort and join together. That's what color sorting is. It's joining the same colors to do at the same time. And of course, as I mentioned before, these last parts of the flower are done on the outside of the boot, so they cannot be done at the same time as the first part of the flowers. So we are all ready to see if the changes we made work in the way that we want them to. So now we're ready to color sort. We need to come to the top toolbar and click Utility and then Color Sort. And it says it's been changed by 6 colors. So let's see if it did what we wanted it to do. Always select a new view. If you click Save It, it will save this, which is fine if we did everything right. But if for some reason we didn't change a color or changed a color wrong and it doesn't run the way we want it to, we would have to start over. So always get in the habit of going to a new view to make sure it's correct. So up here you can see this is our new view, and this is the view that we actually did the color sorting. And you can tell by the original has all of the steps separately. In this new view, we have one design with a bunch of color steps. So let's run the stitch simulator and see if it did what we wanted. I'm going to come down to the hoop size and double click so that our hoop turns again so it's not in our way. So come up to the stitch simulator. When there's big blocks of color, that's a good sign that several steps have joined together. So let's start at the beginning. We will have the placement for our batting. It will jump right to the tack down of our fabric because we deleted those in-between steps. Then it will do the background quilting. Then it starts on the flowers of the left boot. Then it does these little placement lines and tack down lines, and you'll notice it does both together, which is what we want. We want it done on the left boot and the right boot at the same time. Then it starts the outline or the placement line of the boots. It's kind of hard to see because it is a color similar to the background, but there's both boots done at the same time. That's exactly what we want. Then here is the tack down of the fabric, both at the same time. Then we have the outline of the boot on the left, and then the outline of the boot on the right. Then we have the soles of both boots. And then last we have those 3 little parts of the flowers that are on the outside. And that's exactly how we want it. So it color sorted exactly how we needed it to run. There's less steps and therefore less color changes. So that's exactly what we need our block to be. So now I'm going to come up to File, Save Stitch File As. I will name my design Boots 1 with Quilting. Again, I'm going to put it in the combined files because anytime I combine files or make changes to a file, I put it into a combined file. If you find something that works better for you, then of course do whatever you like the best. And then I'm going to hit save. Now I have that saved in my combined files folder. I will add it to my USB and I will take it to my machine. Now with this design up here, I can close it, and it closed without asking if I needed to save it because I had just saved it and gave it a new name. Here is the design that has all 3 separate, and when I close this, it will ask me if I want to save it. I don't want to save it. I've already saved the combined file that's already color sorted, so I don't need to save it. So I will hit don't save, and I'm done with the Embellishment software and I'm ready to go to my machine. I forgot to do an important step. After I closed my design, I remembered that I forgot to rotate the design back into the orientation that it needs to be when it goes to the machine. So I opened my design back up. You can see up here it's the boot 1 with quilting that I just saved, and the hoop is in the correct orientation, but you'll notice that my design is not, and you'll see down here that this will not fit in the hoop that I'm going to be stitching it in. So I need to select the design, go up to the left, rotate, and rotate that now so that it fits in my 7x12 hoop. So all I need to do now is when I save it or when I close it, it will ask me if I want to save because I made a change. I didn't make a change to the actual design, but I did rotate it, and so I do need to save this. I'll hit save, and I've already saved this design, so I am going to open the combined files folder. I will scroll down on the left side. There's my boot 1 with quilting. So it's the same name. I'm going to hit save, and it will ask if I want to replace it because I've already given that a name, so I will hit replace, and now it's saved correctly so that I can now add it to my USB and open it in my machine. I will select Embroidery, go to my USB, then to my Combined Files folder. I will find the Boots 1 and select it, and it'll be centered in the hoop. I will hit Set, and then Embroidery. Now I can move the entire design down and to the left as far as it can go to save on stabilizer. I will run the placement line for the batting. I will lay the batting down, and then I will place the fabric over the batting and run the tack down stitch. and run the background quilting. Now let's finish the rain boots 1. These are the 4 placement lines for the boot straps. I'm ready to attach the straps. I cut the cording in half. The other half will be used for the cream color boots. And this little end on here is, I tried to get it off, but it's really hard and kind of glued on. So I'm just going to cut this little piece off. And then I will cut this piece in half. It's just going to be slightly under 3 inches that the instructions called for, but it will still be plenty. So it's kind of hard to see because I used yellow thread, but you can see right here are the little marks that we will put the straps on and tape and then go tack them down. For this block, I'm going to cut it from the front side. I'm going to line my 8.5 by 6.5 ruler from the front. This block on the bottom and on the top has the quilting that goes into the seam. This is a little bit unique because there's no quilting that goes into the side seams. So in order for me to line up, this is the basting stitch that I took out. It was our tack down of the fabric when we started the block. So I'm going to use those lines to measure the side of my ruler up. Then when I line up, the ruler will be approximately 1/8 of an inch from the top and the bottom quilting. We're done with boots 1, and oh my gosh, are they adorable.